In the wake of the pandemic, they have not joined back, and that's something that is weighing down in terms of adding.
The outlook is darkened significantly since April. The world may soon be teetering on the edge of a global recession, only 2 years after the last one. Multilateral cooperation will be key in many areas, from climate transition and pandemic preparedness to food security and debt distress. Amid great challenge and strife, strengthening cooperation remains the best way to improve economic prospects for all and mitigate the risk of geoeconomic fragmentation.
The fact that you cap your estimate for next year, and briefly, what are your recommendations to the country, whatever the leader might be in the future? Thank you.
In particular, a full shutdown of Russian gas flows to Europe, or inflation pressures remaining more elevated than they've been in the past. And we've been repeatedly surprised by the persistence and the broadening of inflation in recent times, and also an increase in financial tightening around the world. And so if you put all these things together, then we get a global economy, as I mentioned in my remarks, that gets close to 2% in 2023, where we think really a lot of the vulnerabilities are, where you have a lot of slowdown happening. And so 2% is really a sort of a low number for the global economy. That's the sense in which we're getting close, really close, to a global recession. What is really important here is that, in a sense, there is one overwhelming priority at this point, and it is to bring back price stability in advanced economies and in emerging markets as well, that many of them have seen elevated price pressure. And whether we are in the baseline or whether we are in the alternative scenario, inflation pressures are pushing even higher, and there is even more of a need for central banks and policymakers to really address that issue. And this is really critical because it's really necessary to plant the seed for future macroeconomic stability. A stable macroeconomic environment in the future requires that we bring down inflation in the coming year and a half. The current environment suggests that the likelihood that the U.S. economy can avoid a recession is actually quite narrow. Under our current projections, for instance, for the U.S., the quarter Q4 on Q4 growth rate in 2023 is only 0.6%. And 0.6%, that's under our baseline. So you see that a small shock at this point could be enough to sort of knock off the U.S. economy off a fairly low number and sort of tilt it over into recession. So it's a very narrow path at this point.